And we're now bringing on
Hello,
Hishem. Hi, Hishem. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for holding in the green room. It's very difficult because you can't kind of talk to anyone in there while you're waiting. So thanks for your patience while we were
No worries.
hearing from Angela. So Hishem, thanks for joining us on Fast Forward, the Recruiting Exchange. Um, I want to know all about you, and I want to know all about Recruitment Mentors, which I've popped below us in the captions so that people can check out for themselves. So why don't you give me a quick intro to yourself, your history,
Sure.
for those that don't know you, because you're everywhere when it comes to social media and LinkedIn, which is great, and the podcast is brilliant as well.
Thank
So why
you.
don't you give us a bit of an intro to yourself and Recruitment Mentors?
Yeah, no, I'll keep it really short because I'm keen to go into what this is all about. But yeah,
Sure.
really short. Founder of Recruitment Mentors, started the business sort of 14 or so months ago now, and I guess just the important part of the story is worked in recruitment for just under 3 years, and sort of what led to starting Recruitment Mentors was, as you mentioned, the podcast that I started when I was actually in recruitment. I had a terrible first year in recruitment, like a lot of people do, and I was big into my personal development. I was hungry to get my hands on anything that would help me improve beyond getting the advice from the people in that 8-person office I was in. So when I got bored of listening to the Joe Rogan podcast on the way to work one day, I thought, let's look for a recruitment podcast 4 years ago, and it didn't really exist. And I decided just a bit of a gut instinct, really. I decided to start that myself. It was originally called the Recruitment Roller Coaster Podcast, because I experienced that roller coaster firsthand. And the premise and the purpose of it that's remained the same. It's all about deconstructing how some of the most successful recruiters and recruitment entrepreneurs have achieved what they have by, understanding their approach to their daily habits, their approach to their mindset, leadership, all these things. And it sort of led to me then starting a dedicated learning community and platform for recruiters that want to progress their careers without limits. So, what sort of Recruitment Mentors is, and what we're doing is we're basically working with growing recruitment companies that typically rely quite heavily on either the business owner's time, their high performers or billing managers' time to support the less experienced consultants in the business, or they might be really reliant on their consultants to learn on the job to improve their performance. And we help those companies by giving their teams and individuals in their business access to the learning platform where they can learn from the actual current top performers in the industry right now that deliver learning content, if it's live or pre-recorded, on a variety of topics. So that's a sort of short story intertwined with Recruitment Mentors.
No, that's really cool, and obviously, it sounds to me like what you've done is developed a really interesting peer-to-peer kind of learning platform,
Yeah.
where, like you said, people can learn off of top performers in other parts of the industry and other businesses. So that's really really interesting. So, um, was there anything in particular that you wanted to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
on the show today?
Yeah, obviously with the key theme being sort of training and the best way to get the most out of your recruiters.
Hmm.
I'm just going to act as a bit of a sort of vessel of information here because I'm having daily conversations with companies around how they approach learning and development. I interview sort of a number of leaders each month on how they sort of develop their teams and these things. So I just made a couple of notes uh, on this, but I think the part that I really wanted to focus on, and the key theme, was basically around creating intentional spaces with your teams to learn and develop. And are you still there, by the way?
Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
here. Don't worry. I'm
Okay.
giving you the spotlight because
Oh,
this is
right.
this is
Okay.
your time to glow. So
Okay. I
so
wasn't
don't worry.
sure.
I'm
Sorry.
here.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm going to whiz in and out.
Okay.
But
Okay. Sure.
the
Sure. Sure.
spotlight
Sorry.
is yours because you've got
Yeah.
some really interesting stuff to say.
So, so,
Nobody
but,
wants to
so,
watch
yeah.
me.
What I wanted to share, and then I'd love for it to be conversational, is so it's about what are you doing, and are you sort of intentionally creating spaces for your teams to learn? So speak to a lot of companies where, if I was to say to them, how are your teams and consultants currently developing, learning, improving? For a lot of people, it is very ad hoc. It's when the challenge comes up, we might get together and talk about it. It's they're learning on the job, they're failing forward. It's they're sort of talking to our billing manager or the person that they report into whenever they need help. So it can be very ad hoc and reactive. So I guess what I wanted to share is how some ideas on what other companies and people that I've interviewed that are really being intentional with that space to learn. And I think this is especially important in this sort of hybrid working environment that we now find ourselves in. If you're working in the office a couple of days a week, you're then at home, like we have to be even more intentional with creating that space for people to learn. So some food for thought here, some ideas. So one of our customers, a guy called Tom Froggatt from that started a business called Singular Talent. So we always recruitment, you'll hear the word KPIs, have targets, goals. Something that he's done that's gone down really well is that he actually sets learning goals for all of his consultants. So they're not just talking about all the typical goals that you'd expect, but Tom will work with them to understand what are some of the things that they feel like they should improve on, want to improve on, and then they'll actually together agree like a quarterly goal, a learning goal that they're going to work towards, and then Tom would hold them accountable on how they're getting on with that throughout that quarter. So think about creating learning goals is a cool idea. Then I think the next one, which is quite common, but I think people should be more intentional with it, is by creating sort of weekly or bi-weekly sessions that are delivered internally, learning sessions that are delivered by different members of the team. Because you'll typically find in a recruitment business that there'll be certain people in the company that are really good at certain things. You might have someone that's a bit more quiet, may not be on the phone as much, and they're absolutely excellent getting candidates to be curious. They've got really good email response rates. And why not get these people to share some of the best practice, share some of their tactics with the rest of the team? And again, be intentional about creating these weekly or bi-weekly learning sessions. You could do it over lunch, where you get a variety of people in the company who are really good in certain areas and maybe even passionate about these areas, to share some of the things that they continue to find work and they're producing good results. So again, we're being intentional with your high performers or people in the business sharing what's working for them, rather than just relying on your consultants to be curious enough to go up to these people and say, hey, it looks like you're doing really well with this. Can you help? And then the final one is then from a guy called Harry Thornton that I interviewed on the podcast. And he gave a really cool example of a leadership exercise that he does with his team, which they call the war room. Doesn't sound as scary or aggressive as it is, and yeah, probably not a nice word to use right now with what's going on. But basically, what this sort of the war room concept is, I think this is really relevant right now with how the market currently looks. Candidates are spoilt for choice. They're being sort of pulled pillar to post by maybe recruiters. They're going to get counter offers, and it can be really difficult to get candidates over the line and actually start positions right now. So the concept of the war room is something that Harry does with his team every other week, where he'll get his entire team into a room, and he'll split his team into like two groups, and each time the one group would be on one side and one group would be on the other side. And basically one side of the group will talk about, they get sort of 2 minutes to talk about a deal that they're currently working on and some of their biggest concerns around why that deal may not happen. And basically, when they talk about it for 2 minutes, it's then opened up to the entire group to then ask them further questions around why it may not happen, the things that maybe they should think about, and it's creating dedicated space for people to share their experience of like, hey, you said that you're worried about that. I actually had that, and this is what I did to overcome that. And then each week they would alternate with the other group going around the group on their side saying, this is the deal that I want to talk about today, and this is what I'm worried about it not happening. So again, just a really cool idea to encourage an actual space in the week. We all get busy to learn and develop. So the part that I want to share is around creating these intentional spaces, and there are loads of different things that we could be doing.
No, that's really cool. Thanks for that, Hishem. So I kind of wrote down, the three things there. So, setting the learning goals, intentional learning, and creating kind of knowledge transfer as part of that intentional learning, and also this kind of war room. Sorry, I know
war room, yeah.
But more like a debriefing of challenges to get the deal over, which is absolutely really cool. One of the things that stands out to me. So I mean, I've got tons of questions. We could talk about this for hours, because I find this really interesting. On the setting the learning goals, how easy is it for a manager to not only help somebody set kind of the learning goals, but also help them with the path to that goal as well? How do you work with people to help them help their members of staff understand and realize what path they need to take in term to actually hit that goal?
Yes, I mean that's a great question. I think what we're talking about here is so we're talking about like self-awareness basically.
Mm,
It seems like, yeah. So yeah, cool. So I guess like honestly, there definitely isn't like a golden bullet here. I think that the thing that the most important, which I loved about that when Tom shared it with me, was like like there's actually like a goal around their actual learning, because I don't think that's quite common. So I think once together they've identified what it is they want to learn about. To be honest, this is through Tom that we're speaking about this. They actually have like complete free reign on how they go about learning about it. It could
I
be
see.
podcasts, it could be TED Talks, it could be internal sessions. So it was complete free reign. But then I think like it was just using their own experience to go, well, if that's what you want to develop or focus on, these are some of the things that helped me with that. Why don't you take a look at these? But it is quite free reign. But I think what the most important thing about it is like this is what we've agreed that you want to focus on and learn. We're then going to check up on it and go, hey Martin, how are you getting on? What have you done so far? And then you can then interject or encourage them to take certain steps if you feel like they haven't spent much time trying to learn and improve in that area that we both agreed that is something they need to improve on.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And it almost kind of mimics what Angela was saying about the empowerment framework of helping people to kind of work through things themselves and so that they're empowered to make their own decisions and work out their own way through those paths. That makes perfect sense. We're kind of running out of time, but I think one important thing that I thought would be quite interesting to get your take on. Now, obviously, all of this we're talking about, some real kind of communicative and personal relationships between you and your team to help them thrive, to help them get themselves better, to reach their goals and to feed off each other in terms of knowledge sharing and what have you.
Yeah.
In our crazy world where we find most of the time, I'm at home, I think you're at home, so
I mean, in the office.
You're in the office. Well, it's a very homely office then. But most of the time people are at home, and now and obviously a bit of hybrid. How are people overcoming the challenges of remote work and being remote from their colleagues and their co-workers when it comes to some of this stuff in terms of helping people thrive, helping people get better, and also this kind of knowledge sharing, this intentional learning and knowledge sharing that you talk about?
I don't think it's been mastered. Is the short answer. And if I'm being really honest with you, Martin, I don't know how involved you are on the recruitment agency side and stuff, but like most recruitment companies that I've spoken to, like are going down the path of, this isn't everyone, but most companies that I've spoken to is like, if you're a rookie, if you're a sort of a new person in the recruitment industry, you're early on in your recruitment career, there's a good chance that you're going to be in the office. That's how typically and it's because of what you're talking about of like there's just so much value in that early part of their career of being in the office, being able to learn from other people, and that peer-to-peer knowledge sharing is just going to be way more easier when you're in the office. So
Totally get that.
I don't think anyone's mastered it, but if you were to line up 50 recruitment owners right now and you go, if you get a new hire and they're a rookie, are they going to be in the office or not? I'd probably say most of them will say they will, although not everyone will say that.
Yeah.
But I think most of them will say they will. So yeah, I don't want to master that. It's difficult, which is why, blended learning
Totally
and
agree.
having other ways to learn is important.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's an interesting thing that people brought up during kind of the height of the pandemic, was this lack of kind of knowledge osmosis that happens when you're actually in a room with somebody. So I think that's a very, very good point indeed.
Just quickly, I know we're running out of time, but so I interviewed a guy yesterday called Elliot, is involved with 11 Group, and they're going on this huge growth journey where basically 2 weeks ago they hired 60 grads that started all on the same day, right?
Wow.
They're all in the office. So like I think if you were to line up 50 young professionals and say, how excited, like, would you like to be in the office a couple of days a week, maybe the whole week? Be interesting to hear the response. But most people I speak to, are actually excited by that, because we go to work to also build our friendship and social circles. And there's a lot that happens in that office that we want, that is more than just work. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. Well, Shem, we have run out of time, but thank you so much for your time. If you don't mind kind of sticking around in the green room, and if we've got time at the end, I'd love to bring everyone back on just to have a quick thank you.
Yeah, nice. I'll stick around. Yeah, sure.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Cheers, Hishem. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.